You're listening to Deliberate Living, a podcast that inspires, empowers, and encourages listeners to live life more authentically. My name is Holly Priestley, and I'm a full-time nomad who has been living in my 1997 Ford van for more than a year. I travel the United States with my dog, learning how to live with more authenticity. I explore different ways people choose to ditch the prescribed life we've all been sold and live on their terms, finding freedom and happiness however they choose. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Deliberate Living podcast. This is the first episode where I have a repeat guest, and I am so excited to have Yulia Konovnitsyna back on the show. And if you have been listening for a while, Yulia was on when I first started the podcast. She has been a business owner for many years now, and 2-ish years ago, maybe a year and a half ago now, she took the leap to being on the road full time, first just in her little car, and then in a little tent, and then in a car top tent, which is super, super cool, with her adorable dog Milo. And now she's in the process of building out a van, and she's just a light in the world. And I wanted to have her on today to talk specifically about how she is able to pursue the dreams and the goals that she has and get over the hump of fear or inexperience, and really just starting before you're ready, because you're never going to be ready. And I think it's very appropriate and timely right now, given the world that we're all currently navigating, what with the global pandemic and the social uprisings that are happening right now as well. It might feel like your goals are even farther out of reach, but I think Yulia is a good testament as far as keeping your eye on the prize, being flexible about how you get there, but never actually giving up. So hello, Yulia.
Hi, Holly. Thank you for having me again. I'm so excited to be your first repeat guest, and excited to connect with your community, which I'm falling in love with too, because I'm a big fan of what you do.
Oh, I'm so glad. I love your little community that you're building, and I really cannot wait for you to be on the road so that we can caravan together.
I know. Trust me, girl. I'm counting the days till I'm finished, but I am getting closer.
Yes, getting closer. Do you want to talk a little bit about your journey the past few months since you were on the show last, and what's been thrown your way and how you're dealing with it?
Yes, definitely. I feel like it's a great time for all of us to really, actually, this is giving me an opportunity to reflect, and I hope a lot of people are doing the same, because last time I spoke to you, I believe it was at some point in March, and we connected, and I was super into my van build. I was like building day and night, every weekend, spending a lot of hours in it, and I had a deadline of like mid-April I'll be done and I'll be out of Florida. Well, as we all know, none of that has happened, and the world has taken a complete turn on itself. Like, there's no such thing as norm anymore, and so it definitely has impacted me mentally, physically, spiritually, and I'm sure a lot of people, but I'm in a really good place right now. I'm really grateful for all the things that came out of it. But yeah, since we last spoke, I probably took 3 weeks off of just not building, because my state in Florida shut down. Like, we could not leave our houses. A lot of fear was being fed into, what was happening. And so you just didn't know. But, for me, I took the time to really catch up on my sleep finally, reevaluate my trajectory, because being a type A personality, like when I commit to something, I have to see it through. And I was making myself sick, like working on the van build, like just not sleeping, still running my business. And when the pandemic hit, I had to just slow down. Everything was just stalled, and in a way, now that I'm looking back at it, it was probably one of the best gifts I got in my lifetime. It made me deliberately like slow down. I didn't have to even think about it, I didn't have a choice. So that was really cool. Since then, it started to pick up again. I'm being super careful with what's happening. Florida is a hot spot, and I'm all the way south, like next to Miami. So it's definitely, we have a lot of people who are affected by COVID. So you have to be very careful. Can't go anywhere without a mask. But I'm slowly building. I don't no longer have a deadline. I'm just like at a point where, you know what, I can get this done this weekend. I'm going to get this done. And then next weekend, I'll worry about the next project. I would say I'm about 4 to 6 weeks out from finishing the event, but I don't know when that's going to happen. It's today's July 24th. I might be done in the middle of August. I might be done by September 1st. I don't know. And I don't really care. So it definitely helped me not stress so much about it. And then in addition to that, it's just been really fun, like having this extra time with my family. I wasn't very close with them. I feel like they misunderstood me when in 2019 I left. Like I just dropped everything and left, and they were just, you were really crazy. I don't know what you're doing with your life. Like, don't you have goals? Don't you have aspirations? Shouldn't you be getting married? And I was like, nah, none of that's for me. But I think since then I've been able to have a lot more downtime, and I had conversations with my mom and with my friends, and also connecting with people virtually. So I feel like mentally I'm in a much better place now that it's July, and all this extra time that I was given, I was able to, work on myself, take courses, slow down the van build, and like do it the right way without having to, half-ass anything. Read up on things I wanted to read, reflect, journal a lot more, meditate. Even I don't exercise. I'm really bad at it, but I've been doing like more walks with my dog because I had the time. And so instead of doing 15-minute quick, let him go, like we go on an hour walks every evening. And as the sun is setting, it's really beautiful right now. So those have been the things that I immediately have been as a result of the pandemic. And I, in retrospect, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. At the beginning, when all of the disruption was like first kind of coming about and messing up all of your type A plans, did you ever get frustrated in that process, or have you always been able to kind of cultivate a go with the flow attitude?
I wish I could say that. I wish I could just be like, it was a piece of cake. I just surrendered. No, I fought it. I fought it, Holly, because for 3 weeks I was just like, I need to get things done. Why is this not working? And I was really, really tense. But honestly, what happened is it was a lot of like undoing my own conditioning. It was a lot of that. I'm not a person who sits around and waits on things. I'm not a patient person. I'm not a person who likes to be like, go with the flow. I always try to force myself to get up and do things, even if I'm physically limited. But it definitely has been something that I had to work on for my mental health, to allow myself to not feel like a failure because I couldn't accomplish a project this weekend that I wanted to accomplish. So no, I definitely fought it, but I saw a progression. I saw like how every weekend, like the first 3 weekends of not doing anything, by the time I was at like the 4th weekend, I felt like lighter. I felt more determined to, work on other things, like keep myself busy and do things that made me happier. My sister was down here from California, so I was spending a lot of time with her and just having conversations, and she was giving me ideas. And I realized sometimes making progress is not just physically doing the things. Sometimes like visualizing them, planning them ahead, doing additional research. Even ordering things on Amazon that at that time took a month to deliver, right? Because it wasn't emergency supplies. Even doing that helped me like feel productive without feeling completely loss of control, which I feel when when I don't get my way, I guess.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think I'm the exact same way. I really like being in complete control of what's going on at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And, like sometimes my friends or family have told me like, oh man, you're so like go with the flow and so easy. And I'm like, these are carefully constructed ruses. This is not factual.
Yep.
And then when things don't go exactly how I want them to, I get very clingy to my original idea. And why isn't this going the way that I wanted it to? And why is everything being so hard? And, why isn't this working? And then you internalize it, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it's my fault. I'm a failure. I'm,
right.
Bad or whatever. And that's not factual either. And so sometimes, being forced to take a step back
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad thing.
Definitely. Speaking of that, like I call that imposter syndrome, and that's been definitely something that haunted me from the beginning, but it's been so much better now that there isn't a deadline, right? And so like when we first connected on the first episode, I was telling you how like I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was feeling it throughout the entire process, and things were just very challenging. Like I would spend a whole weekend working and, get back into my business of working on my like clients' work, and I just never had breaks, and like I just carried this heaviness through every week after week, and it just grew and grew and grew. And then literally the pandemic happened, and I had this sensation of like all this air, the stale air that was inside my lungs, it just kind of like deflated, and I was able to like let that go. And so definitely have a lot less imposter syndrome. I no longer feel like I have to prove anything to anybody, and I'm no longer in a competition with myself, because I was like pushing myself because I made up this deadline that wasn't even realistic. And now it's like, it is what it is. I can get this done today, or I can get this done this weekend. It won't change a thing, because we live in a world that is full of uncertainty, and such is life. So yeah, definitely has been healthier to reflect on some of the imposter issues that I've had before, and overcome them. The pandemic helped me with that, actually.
Yeah, I think that one thing you said, that we live in a world of uncertainty, and it's very obvious right now that we live in a world of uncertainty with everything that's going on. But I think even a year ago, it was the same thing was true. We still live in a world of uncertainty, and I think if most people, myself included, absolutely, knew for certain, this new thing that you wanted to do, this business that you wanted to start, or the van that you wanted to build out, or the relationship that you just got into, if we all knew for certain it would work out, we would do a lot more things.
Yeah.
But there is no certainty in anything. And how do you personally, I mean, you've done all of those things. You've started the businesses, you've worked on them, you've grown them, you've changed your lifestyle around, you've had relationships, having a relationship. How do you personally get through the uncertainty? Sometimes, when you feel like, I don't know how this is going to go, and it could royally fuck up. How do you get yourself going anyway?
Yeah, it's a great question, Holly. So, in the last year, well, my entire story started with uncertainty, and the uncertainty was that, I lost a friend who was 33 to cancer, and that was like one of the biggest wake-up calls of my life. And I just realized, like, that was in 2018. I realized, like, wow, all those things, I'm waiting till I have enough money, enough free time, enough validation and credibility to like be able to do this full time without like sacrificing my business, sacrificing my community. But I knew at that time that like none of that was real. It was always uncertain. Like life is such a fragile thing, it can be taken away from us. Or a norm is such a fragile thing, that it can be taken away from us overnight, as we all learned this year. So I feel like in a way, I'm very fortunate to have walked in those shoes in 2018, and that kind of prepared me a little bit to embrace this whole notion of like nothing is ever for certain. But this year has definitely has opened up my eyes to even how much further you can take that. What gets me out of bed in the morning is just my passion for what I do. I love my freedom. That is the number one thing for me. I love the idea of, committing to something and seeing it through to the end. And if it's going to, play into the whole freedom drive goal for myself that I have, like I'm gonna accomplish it. It's not easy though. I have days when I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I have to face the reality. I have to build this cabinet. I have to figure out how to attach this hinge. I have to do this project for my client, and it's not easy. But I think at the end of the day, like every time you get a step closer to the commitment that you made to yourself, there, first of all, chemically something happens in our bodies hormonally that is a reward, for accomplishing something. And I'm sure that plays into the whole incentive part of it. But for me, like, it just feels really good to be truthful to myself. I said I'm going to do this, and whether it took me a week or a month, I did it. I accomplished it, and there is this feeling of accomplishment and great gratitude to myself for being able to achieve that. I wish I could give you like specific things. I do a morning routine. I wake up, I have crystals that I use for just grounding myself, and I meditate. I can't say I meditate every day. I wish I could, but I don't. I do about 10 to 15 minutes a day, a few times a week. I don't really do it on weekends. I wish I should force myself to do that. But the thing that stayed true is every morning I have my celery juice, and that's like a thing that I do for myself. It's very intentional. You gotta wash the celery, cut it up, because I don't like to pre-juice or pre-cut anything, and then you make your juice, and that takes me usually 15 to 20 minutes every morning, and that's been the thing that kept my routine kind of going for the last 8-9 months already that I've been doing. That keeps me healthy, gives me the energy that I need. So it's like little things. Sometimes it's the tiniest things that allow us to have this routine in the midst of a chaos, that ground us, and they actually help us more than we can ever imagine if we like did a to-do list of what we have to accomplish. It's the little things for me.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, and I think that's so true and so interesting. I also have a morning routine that I do 98% of the time, not every day. I wake up and I journal immediately, and my journaling practice can change periodically, but I write at least a full notebook page every day.
Nice.
Just about whatever's on my mind, which is usually whatever happened the day before, but not always. And sometimes I'll throw in gratitudes, at least 5 gratitudes, or 5 goals that I have, or something like that, to kind of set me off on the right foot. And then right now I'm throwing in exercise after that, and then getting into like my tea and my breakfast and that kind of part of my routine. And I've always noticed for me that when I'm building on a routine, or I want to like develop a new habit in my life, it's easier to do that and like tack it onto another part of a routine. Like journaling is a staple, and it's the first thing I do, and that's fine. I don't look at my phone until after I've done my journaling. I don't do anything really until after I've done that. So then if I want to throw in like exercise or running or something of that nature, it's easiest for me to just kind of shove it in the middle somewhere, or like tack it on to the end. But I think that having those habits and having those routines really can help us follow through on our intentions and get us set up for success for the rest of the day. You said something that I thought was interesting that I wanted to ask a little bit more about, that it always feels good to you when you have been more true to yourself. And I think that knowing yourself well enough to know whether or not you're being true to yourself is a challenge, especially when we've been raised with all of these expectations of productivity, or as you said before, like your family has expectations that you're going to have a certain degree and a certain job, and you're going to get married and have kids, or whatever it is. So we're taught that life goes a certain way regardless of who you are. But then in order for you to be true to yourself, you have to dissect that and unlearn a lot of the things that we've learned in order so that you can like relearn who you actually are. Do you have any advice about that? How did you go about that process of figuring out what is true to Yulia?
Absolutely. It's a packed question for sure, Holly. It's a painful process. I'm sure anybody who's done any self-development work, they know it's a painful process, because you're not really responsible for the things like in your childhood, the things that happen to you. And for me, I grew up in a household that's very like, my mom was a dominant figure in our family. She's extremely goal-oriented and very like straightforward, and it was very like little sugarcoating in my life. So like, you kind of just get straight to the point. There's very little like discussion of emotions, and there was never permission to really feel. We always just talked surface level, like this needs to get done. Well, if it's difficult, get over it, because it still needs to get done. And so I grew up with a little bit of tough love. And so, yes, naturally, it's very hard for me to be kind to myself. I have a hard time, like, allowing that space to maybe do nothing, and that do nothing is self-care, because that do nothing is, you know, physically like building vents or doing my work or like forcing myself. It do nothing could be reading or taking a walk with my dog, or catching up with a friend, or taking, you know, or writing something. I also journal usually in the evening before bed, because I feel like sometimes I can't even go to sleep unless I put things down on paper. So yeah, it's that self-work is extremely painful for me sometimes, because it makes me face those things that I'm very insecure about myself. For me personally, self-care is really important, but it's not easy, because I grew up with just like no time for any of that, no time for anything fluffy. And so I still feel like self-care can be it can feel very fluffy. And I had to learn to process my own emotions, because I wasn't given those tools as a child. And I'm not trying to blame, I love my parents, I think they did amazing things for me, but the pandemic has definitely brought up a lot of those insecurities back, you know, being unproductive or being less productive.
Yeah.
My business got affected, of course, because I do marketing for a living, so budgets got cut. And it was very heartfelt. I have great relationships with my clients, so we were all on the same page. I obviously understood that for them a lot of things have changed, but you know, having that downtime and like really not knowing what to do with it made me like put a giant to-do list of all the goals and things that I wanted to accomplish, and then I sat there and I tried to do them, and I just couldn't mentally commit, like starting a YouTube channel and taking classes. And sometimes I would sign up for these things, and I would get myself into the mindset I need to do this, and then you would start and you just don't feel like it, you know. And I felt so shamed for a while for not be living up to my own expectations, feeling like I'm lazy, or what's wrong with me, why can't I just do this simple thing today? But we're not really realizing that the fear and the uncertainty around us, it's not our normal. You know, our productivity for all of us have decreased, our anxiety went through the roof, and like we are not kind enough to ourselves to allow for the adjustments, like, you know, maybe sleep longer and, you know, have more time for reflection. I was still trying to be squeezing every drop of juice out of myself. And so yeah, the pandemic has made me realize, like, in order to be productive, you need to have a lot more balance in your life. And sometimes it's okay to take a day off, to sleep in a little longer, to not build the whole weekend, you know, take a weekend off from building the van. And I just feel a lot more happier and in peace with myself than I've ever before in my life, because I told you last time, it took me 5 years to build my business, and I scaled it up, then I scaled it down to be able to do van life and living on the road full time, even in my car. And I always felt like, oh my gosh, I need to do more. Never in my life before have I had a moment where I was like, I'm okay with what I have. I'm okay with not pushing myself. And it feels right at this moment to like not have a giant to-do list every morning when I wake up, and just to enjoy, spend some time with my dog sitting on a patio and catching a ray of sun. It's nice. It's been great having my tea in the evenings, you know, with a book. Like, it's been great. It's things I've never done before in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally feel you. I have days where I don't get anything done, and I get really down on myself that I wasn't more productive. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my friends will remind me that, you know, so there's a spectrum of answers that I'll get from that when I'm complaining, like, I wasn't productive as I wanted to be today. Sometimes my friends will say something to the effect of, you know, it's okay to rest. You need to rest. Like, resting is important. Relaxing is okay.
Yeah.
You know, and give me those nice soft advices. And then sometimes my friends will be like, productivity is propaganda of capitalism. It's terrible, and you don't need to do it.
I gotta love friends like that. That's awesome.
It's pretty fantastic, and I appreciate it all very much. And I mean, I'm fully with you. Like, I feel like I need to squeeze every ounce of productivity out of myself, and I feel guilty if I am not working or earning or doing something, you know, productive. And that's very cultural, and it's something that we need to unlearn. In kind of the same vein of that, and, you know, rolling with the punches, or going with the flow, or, you know, dealing with a pandemic, I learned about something recently called the backwards law or the reverse law or something like that. And it was basically saying that wanting a good experience is in and of itself a negative experience. And accepting a negative experience is in and of itself a positive experience. Because if you're wanting something, that reinforces the fact that you don't have it, which is negative.
Yes.
And if you're just accepting that this is what it is, you're not fighting against it, which is positive. And I think that that is something that I personally need to remind myself all of the time. But I think that it sounds like that's what COVID has done for you, is just kind of just accept it and enjoy what you have, and don't fall prey to the propaganda of capitalism.
I love that conclusion. That hit a home run with me because a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to do Vipassana meditation. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in the first podcast. And in there, I actually learned that there's only two things that cause misery to all of us. And it's two things that are applicable to every human. It's craving, which is desiring outcomes that, you set your expectations for that you don't control. And aversion is trying to not have the outcomes that don't suit you. And so craving and aversion, those are the exact two things. You just put it in very human, everyday words, but that is exactly the two things that, we constantly are expecting and aiming and putting our, this bar for ourselves, we have to get there, we have to reach this, we have to do this. But in reality, when you kind of flow through life, and you're still able to do the things that you want to do, but you're not keeping yourself super accountable to them and forcing yourself to do them until you're ready. Life just feels so much more organic, and you're so much more happier because of it. And so, I think that knowing something is only part of the battle. Putting that into implementation is just a lot harder, because theoretically I've had this knowledge for, 5-6 years since I've done Vipassana. Why haven't I been practicing it? It's because we forget. It's so much easier to get back into this chasing your own tail, right? That cycle of productivity. And also look at our society. Besides the pandemic, everything happening with the civil rights and the social justice movement, right? We are learning a lot from that as well, about where productivity came from. It has a very dark beginnings that are rooted in slavery. And I'm like, holy shit, I had no idea. And I'm processing all this as well, and as an immigrant and as a white person, I feel so guilty, emotionally, from all of that's happening. I want to be a better human, but being a better human takes up energy, it takes up time, it takes up resources and effort of you trying to learn and unpack all that. So I feel definitely it's time to reset your batteries, slow down, reevaluate what your priorities are, and also why are you even doing what you're doing. And for me, that's been super amazing. Because I feel I've grown a lot. I have so much work still to do, but also it's a humbling experience to know that, I've had a cool year last year where I traveled and I was free, and I thought the idea of freedom was this in a beautiful box. Holy shit, I had no idea how much more it is to that. There's freedom physical, there's mental freedom, spiritual freedom, community of people that, help each other get to that freedom. So there's so much more to unpack there, and I'm grateful for this journey.
I think that, having those experiences is incredible and useful, and if these are the things that you want, you should definitely go after them, but be prepared to learn more along the way, right? I want the freedom of living in a van, so I'm going to make that happen. Okay, cool. But then while you're doing that, you're also learning that there's so much more to freedom, and there's so many more different ways that it can be present in your life. Just being free to relax around your friends and, have them accept you for who you are is a specific kind of freedom that not everybody gets, but you can get. But we don't all automatically get it.
It's beautiful thought, actually, self-acceptance as well. That is a huge portion of freedom, because you take on this goal, this idea and the identity of what you want to be. You want to live in a van, right? But you get a lot of judgment around that. So even coming into peace with that notion is not easy. And sometimes it takes years, right? For us to constantly not react to what people are saying, to not take those words when they look at you and they're like, wow, you live in a van, okay, that's cool and interesting, and you don't take that to heart like, wow, I feel judged, but this person might just not know. So yeah, that's definitely a huge part of like that personal freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the more you know and accept and love yourself, the more freedom you're going to have, no matter what it is that you're looking for from freedom. And you don't get to control like how other people see you or how they perceive your actions or your lifestyle or anything. I had a friend recently lament that, everybody saw her one way, but she wasn't that way. She's this way. And how can she show people that she's this way instead? And I'm like, girl, you can't do that. I mean, the only thing you can do is live your life the way that it works for you. And you don't get to decide how other people see you.
Yeah, stay true to yourself. And then also like being aware of what's expected of you, but not allowing that expectation to like derail your own truth. And we're kind of coming back to that whole notion of truth, right? It's so important. It's been like, I think it's been a recurring theme of my life. I always wanted to be authentic. And I can never really, every time I try to be somebody else, like I try to be cool. I was never a cool kid. I didn't speak English. So when I came here and I went to like high school, people didn't understand what the freaking hell I was saying, because I knew English. I was studying English for a year at that time, and I still couldn't really speak it fluently. And so like I never blended in with the cool kids, with the van life community. I traveled in a car, and even then I felt like an imposter, even though I was really doing the same thing as everybody else. But I felt my own projection of what I was doing was like impacted by that, right? And so you can have all this like identities attached to yourself, like, oh, I want to be this, I want to be, but you can really not be anything other than what you are. And the minute you accept that and you like let go of this pressure of having to like, I want to portray myself as that, like as a woman, I literally get this like every couple of weeks somebody email me and be like, it's usually a guy, and it's like, has anybody ever told you that you're intimidating? Like literally, I was telling my boyfriend, it happened like a week ago. Some random person followed me on Instagram, watched my story, and says, has anybody ever told you you've been intimidating? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, like every week. But I used to think of that's a shame. Like I should be softer as a woman, but I'm not a soft woman. That's not who I am. I grew up as brothers. We climbed trees. I hang out at abandoned properties, and I camped out like 30 days in a row when I was a kid. Like that's what we did for fun. So yeah, I'm not like a pretty girl who gets her hair and nails done. Like that's not me. And I can't, even if I try, like my mom wants me to be that, but I can't fit into this identity. And so I just accepted the fact that I am who I am. And I'm so much more happier with the fact that this is me. Like I don't have to try and live up to anybody else's expectations. So truth is a big thing in this whole thing.
Yeah. And that story makes me feel two things. One, just because they are intimidated doesn't mean that you are intimidating. Mm-hmm. So don't own that if it doesn't speak for you. But I think that a lot of that, what you just said, also comes down to what we were talking about with the backwards law and aversion and craving. Like, I don't want to be who I am, so I'm going to try and be somebody else. That is craving and aversion, right, in and of itself, right? Like, I want to be this person. I want to be perceived as this person. I don't want to be this person. Mm-hmm. And if that's what you're doing, you're really just like creating a lot of tension in yourself and making yourself miserable. So if you reverse it and you just accept who you are and you don't try to avoid like your personality and your truth, you're going to be happier and more authentic and, more patient and just a better contributor to the world.
Totally. And then also when you do that, you have to confront your own fears, because none of us are perfect. Let's face it, right? As organized as I am in my business, in my regular life, I have a hard time, like, making my doctor's appointments sometimes. Like I just put it off. Yep. Or like my insurance registration, I renewed it the day after it expired. I knew about it for weeks. I needed to, but it's just, those are the things that I'm really bad at. I don't know why. It's just like it always becomes so irrelevant because I'm always doing other things for other people, and so I forget to like take care of myself with the routine things. And it's an insecurity as well, but knowing that I am like that makes me, instead of like trying to deny it and push it away and like hide it from the world, it makes me like face it. And every time I have a hard time, like, oh, why didn't I do this the right way the first time, I allow myself to like not judge myself too harshly, accept that this is just an imperfection, something I'm late to things all the time. Like, it's just, this is how I am. I do feel guilty, but I don't have to feel ashamed about it. You know, this is something that I'm constantly a work in progress. And so, yes, like accepting who you truly are also allows you to work on some of those things that you're not proud of, right?
Yeah.
Unpack, open that dirty box of a closet, a storage in a closet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, one thing that I've heard from people who refuse to address their own issues, like we're not perfect. We all have toxic traits. I've heard a number of people, and probably even myself, say like, well, it's just the way I am, and like not, and like use that as an excuse not to address the issue. And I don't think that that's the right way to go about it either. I think that you can accept who you are and love who you are and still work to be a better version of your most authentic self. So, if you do have some toxic traits, you're like, oh, or even like lightly, annoying traits, like I'm late everywhere. Like, well, that's just who I am. Like, okay, but you can work on that and like try and, eliminate or mitigate the toxicity as well. So accepting yourself is not necessarily letting yourself off the hook on fixing it, but it's also not like, self-flagellating all of the time that you do something that you don't like either.
I agree. And I think this is more relevant than ever with everything happening in the civil rights, Black Lives Matters community, for all of us to kind of come to terms with that ignorance, right? Because ignorance is something that's, I mean, it's like normal until you know you don't know, right? And so a lot of people have a lot of shame around that. When Black Lives Matter became the trending topic of June, right, and May, I was very ashamed in the beginning because I have Black friends. I've always had Black friends. I'm an immigrant myself. I always felt like I was open-minded. I never had a problem with racism, but I also didn't understand systematically how the system works. I didn't understand how it's ingrained in everything, and like I had a really hard time with that. I don't know about you, Holly, but like I had a really hard time with like
so much
guilt, right? And having your eyes open so wide, and you're like, wow, I can't believe I allowed for this to carry on, and I could have done so much more. And even accepting those limitations and ignorance and allowing yourself to, I can't fix the past, what can I do better going forward? All of those things have also been like big projects that I've been working on for myself as some part of my self-growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that everything that's going on right now in the world is, I mean, awful and horrendous and not what anybody wanted. I also think that it is a really great opportunity for us to grow from it and learn from it and be more involved and find ways to live our truths and also help the people around us to live theirs.
Yeah. And I guess this kind of taps back into your original question of like what inspires me to, every time like I don't really know what I'm doing ever. Like honestly, like 90% of the times I'm doing things and I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's funny. It's like a funny feeling. I'm really used to it by now. Like when I started my business, I had no freaking idea what I was doing. And that imposter syndrome is something I have to constantly fight. But also in a way, like when you're doing something that feels very right, and it serves other people, it contributes more than it takes away, it kind of becomes a thing you look forward to. You're doing the right thing, you're being a good contributor to the system. So that also drives me to, when I feel uncertain about my goals, like I've done this before, I've been here before, I didn't know what I was doing, I've overcome it, I've had people that offered me a hand, and another thing is like believing that you can, I don't know if, did we talk about law of attraction last time? I can't remember.
I think we probably touched on it, but I don't think we went deep into it.
So that was something that I was aware of about for many years, but I didn't really know how to utilize it. But like, it's not that I even have like the tools, like I know I just turn it on and it works. No, it's just I've become a lot more receptive to the idea that if you set your intention and you work towards it every day, like things will happen for you. And for example, in the last couple of months, I needed help with a specific project, and I found I needed an electrician, and I found an electrician. He was in Portland. He was somebody I knew who was kind of like a friend of a friend. Wasn't planning on helping me with the build, but like I needed some help, and he like just happened that he was taking a vacation in Florida anyways, and it like life just connected us. I needed a workshop for cutting wood, didn't know anybody, was like trying to pay somebody to like on Craigslist, didn't work out. But then like I had a friend of a friend connect me with like a guy who makes wood floors. And so all those things, like if you really believe and you pay attention and you show up for those opportunities that happen, they kind of propel you forward a little bit. You start seeing this like little signs, like little seeds that, if you just follow the little crumbs, if you follow the trail, it takes you to the end of your goal. And so I've been a lot more comfortable with this idea, even though like I was always taught that's very new agey. Like my parents are all like super pragmatic, and I'm not anymore, because I'm unlearning that life is pragmatic. Because we talked about this right now, nothing is ever certain. You don't control anything. So what is the point of like having this expectation? Sometimes it's okay to just trust that things will, you're on the right journey. And then that's been like one of the biggest motivations for me this year. It's just let go of the control and allow myself to figure it out one step at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's so hard for people to do, including myself, to like see the breadcrumb and be like, all right, we'll just see what happens, or like you just follow like your tiny curiosity. Like I think so many of us are waiting for some, big lightning bolt, kind of sign, when life is really just giving you like a little bit of like, hey, look over here.
Yeah.
Just like a little tiny thing. And if you pay more attention to those, I think things are bound to kind of work out in your favor. But you also have to be like willing and open to accept them also.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is probably the biggest, not an issue. It's not an issue. It's just like it's the biggest excuse people have is they're not willing to take a leap into this opportunities. Like I have friends who, they recognize that this is the time to make dramatic changes in your life. Like if you're not happy with your career, well, you're kind of on furlough right now anyways. Why aren't you looking at other opportunities? But there's like a lot of fear around that. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I've had this job for 5 years. So I don't really know how else I can apply myself. But like you can wait your whole life and you will never get the opportunity, because the opportunities are coming and you're constantly like, oh, I'm not ready. Well,
right.
If I like waited till I was ready to start my business, I probably would still be working corporate and not building my van, because I wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. If I waited, we talked a little bit before our call, we talked about relationships. I was building my van. I wasn't ready. I was not looking to date anybody. I wasn't looking to get myself into anything. And then, when the pandemic hit, I just happened to join a dating app, and I just wanted to see what will happen. I wasn't intentional about like even like doing any searches on it, but I connected with somebody and things have escalated into an actual relationship, and I couldn't be happier because I met somebody who just makes me feel so much more, filled with like amazement and curiosity and like, just this hunger for like experiences and adventures in life. And it's fun to do that by yourself. Like as solo travelers, it's amazing to be on your own out there, but sometimes it's nice to share your life with somebody, and those moments are so precious. And so like I was resisting that. I wasn't looking for that, but then at some point like the shift happened, right? The pandemic happened, and I had the time, and I just surrendered to what if. And here I am, and I'm like been seeing this person for 3 months, and I'm so happy.
Yeah, definitely. I think it all comes down to the topic of today's episode anyway, is just starting before you're ready, because if you wait until you're ready, you're never going to do anything. And it's true in any area of life, whether you want to move into a van or not, if you want to buy a house or not, if you want to be in a relationship or not, if you want to have kids, if you want to change your career, if you want to go vegan, if you want to run a marathon, like it doesn't fucking matter what it is that you want to do. If you wait until you're ready, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be there. People always talk about like, well, I'm lucky or I'm unlucky. And like luck is just preparedness meeting opportunity. So when the
Absolutely.
opportunity shows up and you keep it at an arm's reach because you're not ready, like, well, no shit, you're unlucky. You're not accepting
Yeah.
any luck.
Absolutely. I love that you said that because I feel like that's also, I'm a scientific mind, so I look at luck the same way. It's very like calculated, right? And you could totally use luck as a force that propels you forward, but you
Yeah.
absolutely have to be self-aware about all the things that are around you and all the people that are around you. And I don't know about you, I have a really hard time accepting help. At least up until this year, I had a really hard time accepting help when I started a project like building the van and whatever that whatever other projects there are. Like, you can always count on people who are in your circle because they're there for a reason, they've been there for a reason. And when I needed help, those people showed up and they were able to give me advice, give me physical support, a hand sometimes, and it's been amazing to like also recognize that, because sometimes we have this pressure of having to do everything ourselves, and those goals look insurmountable, right? The
Yep.
giant mountains we have to climb solo. And so, yeah, you might be unprepared, but along the way, you'll have somebody, give you a hand here and, throw you a rope there and show you the way over here. And you will stay on that path if you allow for all those people to show up and be there for you. So that's been another huge, I would say it's new to me. This is something
Yeah.
that I'm still making terms with, because I was always like, do it yourself. You want to get something, then do it yourself. And all of a sudden I'm realizing I could never get anywhere myself if I didn't have all these people in my life.
Yeah. That has also been my story. For some reason, it's ingrained in me that like needing help or accepting help is weak and somehow
Mm-hmm.
diminishes the accomplishment, which is a rule that my brain has made only for me, which is
Mm-hmm.
completely unfair. If somebody else, gets help and accomplishes their goal, I don't think less of them for it, But if I get help, I'm like, oh, I'm just incapable of doing it myself, and like that's not true. And a lot of that is like stubbornness and cultural and wholly unhealthy. And I think that part of being open to even getting anywhere near your goals is like letting the universe bring other people into your life who can
Absolutely.
help you along the way, because doing it yourself, like, sure, you might be able to do it all by yourself, but it's going to take a lot longer, and why make it more difficult? Which is,
Absolutely.
I'm not good at it. I still like doing everything all by
Oh
myself.
yeah. It's that ego, right?
Yeah.
Ego is the enemy. One of my mentors told me years ago when I first started my business, I had to get help. I couldn't do it all by myself because I just didn't believe in my own powers. And so he came on board and he kind of took me in, like surrounding me with all the belief and care and affection and guidance, and I like was able to like really blossom from there. Planted some seeds in my head. But one of the things he told me is, we're so critical to ourselves, right? We constantly are negative self-talking, undermining ourselves, making ourselves feel guilty about the things we didn't do or wanted to do, but came short. And one of the things he told me is, think about how you speak to yourself. Like, would you say those words to your friends or somebody in your life who you love and you care about? No, we would
Nope.
never talk. So we are ourselves worst, like our own selves enemies, worst enemies, right? And so like I have to be very intentional with the minute I start having those thoughts in my head, like I'm a failure, that what I did was wrong, or I'm so guilty here. I have to constantly reground myself and go back to this conversation from years ago and be like, okay, Holly, if Holly called me and she told me all these things that she was struggling with, would I be like, well, Holly, it's your own fault. Like, you could be like, I would never do that, right? Because I care about my friends and I care about other people's feelings. But why do I do this to myself? So like once I learned that, and it became something that kept coming up, like I'm a lot more kinder and milder to myself. And instead of like bashing myself all the time, I now give myself like a little pat on the shoulder and say, it's okay to cry today. It's okay to feel, unproductive. It's okay. And then tomorrow you're going to get up and you're going to start over. And that's been like one of those gifts that I got along the way from a person I met in my journey. And it still works true today. And hopefully by sharing this, I can give other people that peace of mind that they can be kind to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really critical. I do the same thing. Like, I would never speak to anybody the way I speak to myself sometimes. And also, I would not tolerate anybody talking to me the way that I talk to me. And yet there's this huge double standard where it's okay for me to talk to myself that way, and I'll keep putting up with me. And it's not productive, and it's not kind, and it doesn't make you a better person in any way. It doesn't make you happier. It doesn't make you more productive. Why do we do this to ourselves? It's not a good thing to do. So yeah, I think that's great advice. Like, to look at what you're saying to yourself and consider like saying that to somebody that you were, in love with. Like, would you ever tell anybody that?
Rule of thumb for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yulia, if people wanted to know more about you or follow you on the internet, how would they do that?
Yes, thank you for asking, Holly. So I'm on Instagram mainly. That's my biggest platform that I use every day. It's my handle is Many Soulful Miles, and I also have a blog that I run, manysoulfulmiles.com. I can't say I'm really good at updating it, but it's there. You can read my story on it, and I have a YouTube channel with the same name. Don't have my videos up yet, but I filmed a lot over the course of the build, so hopefully I'll get them out eventually into the universe. So that would be the best way to keep in touch.
Awesome. And I'll put links to those all in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Yulia, for being a part of this again. I think that you are such a wonderful, magical light in the world, and I'm so happy that we are able to connect this way, and I can't wait until you get on the road, and maybe the next time we do an episode, we'll be sitting side by side. I think that would be great.
I would love that. And I feel exactly the same about you. And I think that was something that was very innate when we first met. Like, I felt very drawn to you. I think that you're amazing. And what you're doing is it's giving people who are maybe not so far in their journey yet, who are still trying to like find their purpose. It's giving them a little bit of guidance, and we all need the guidance. It's the truth. We can surrender to that. We all need guidance sometimes. And so I'm really grateful to have you in this community and have you as a friend. It was really nice to, catch up and share a little bit more from my end. And I loved seeing your face. It was so good.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet. That's all I want to do, is just give people a little bit of a pep talk when they need it.
Definitely. So yeah, look forward to seeing you on the road, sister, whatever that might be, whenever that might happen.
Yeah, that would be great. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll keep an eye out for more van developments, and I will talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Take good care. Bye.
Bye. We've reached the end of this episode of Deliberate Living. You can find the show notes and everything we referenced over on my website, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, on YouTube, or sign up for email updates every time something new is published. I'll see you next time on Deliberate Living, and until then, keep your life on the DL too.